Miss Liz, tea time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time, tea time, yeah, Miss Liz, tea time, yeah, making a difference, one cup at a time, tea time, yeah. So be sure to grab your tea, grab a seat, and tune in to Miss Liz, tea time. Making a difference, one cup at a time. Tea time, yeah. Tea time, time.
Well, welcome everybody to Evening Tea Time with Miss Liz. That's right, we're back and we've done 3 shows again this week. This morning we started off with Clear Your Clutter, and then we went into advertisement and features and content creators and all of that good stuff. And tonight we have Marianne Sciucco, who is here. She's a co-founder and director of AlzAuthors. She's an author, she's a nurse, and a podcast host, and she's going to be talking to us about Alzheimer's and dementia and her personal story as well. We're going to go a little deep. So before we get started, we're going to do the disclaimer and all of that good stuff, and then we're going to do a little bit of intro on who Marianne is, and then we're going to sit and we're going to spill a double TEA tonight because me and Marianne have something special that's going to come out during the show. Disclaimer for Miss Liz's Tea Time live show. Miss Liz myself is going live using StreamYard. Before leaving a comment, please grant StreamYard permission to use your name at StreamYard.com. Please be advised that the content brought forward for any Tea Time show hosted by myself, Miss Liz, is always brought forth in good faith. However, may bring forward dialogues and opinions that are not representative of my platform. The facts and information are perceived to be accurate at the given time of airing. All Tea Time guests and audience participants are responsible for using their good judgment in taking any action that may relate to the discussion. The content brought forward may include discussions for some where they may be emotionally at risk. It's significant to note that this show is engaging in discussion forums only to offer and inspire awareness and connection, and is not providing therapeutical advice. If you have any questions about the disclaimer or the panelist discussion, you may freely contact me, Miss Liz, through my email at bookingmissliz@gmail.com. Moving forward, should you choose to voluntarily participate in tonight's show in any aspect, I myself, Miss Liz, welcomes you. And should you decide that the show is not made for you at this time, I respect those wishes and will see you at a later show at a later date and time. And again, all Tea Times this year in 2023 are done on Thursday, 10 a.m., 3 p.m., and 7 p.m. every Thursday. If it's not a Thursday, it's a surprise guest or a rescheduled Tea Time, which is done on a Monday or Tuesday, because that's just how Miss Liz rolls. So now a little bit more on Marianne. Marianne Sciucco is not a nurse who writes, but a writer who happens to be a nurse, using her skills and experience to create stories that bear witness to the humanity in all of us. She writes contemporary women and young adult fiction. A lover of words and books, she studied the craft of writing as an English major at the University of Massachusetts at Boston, and worked for a time as a newspaper reporter in New England. She eventually became a registered nurse to avoid poverty. With more than 20 years experience as a staff nurse and case manager, she worked with countless families dealing with issues related to aging, elder care, Alzheimer's, and nursing home placements. In 2002, she put the two together and began writing about the intricate lives of people struggling with health and family issues. She published her debut novel, Blue Hydrangeas, on Alzheimer's love story in 2013 to glowing reviews. This book led to become a co-founder and director of AlzAuthors, the global community of authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia, from personal experiences to light the way for others. She is a podcast producer and host of Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia on AlzAuthors podcast. Marianne has written an award-winning prequel to Blue Hydrangeas called Christmas at Blue Hydrangeas and is currently working on A Wedding at Blue Hydrangeas. She is the author of Swim Season, a young author novel based on her 11-year experience as a swim mom in club, high school, and college swimming. She has also written several short stories, including Eno Love Collection and Birthday Party. All her work is available in Kindle, audiobooks, and paperback. When not writing, she works as a campus nurse at a community college in New York, Houston Valley. For more on Marianne on her blog, you can check her out on Twitter, Facebook, and LinkedIn. And I'm going to get her in here and we're going to spill some tea now. Welcome, Marianne.
Hello. Thank you so much, Miss Liz. Thank you for inviting me.
It is a pleasure. And I wanted to read your full bio because it is truly inspiring what you do. And I want to give you a big thank you for all of your services as a nurse. Our nurses don't get enough appreciation.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So, Marianne, I want to start off like I do all the tea times. Who were you as a little girl and who are you now?
As a little girl, I was a child who could not wait to learn how to read and write. And as a grown woman now, I am reading and writing just about every day. I mean, I never stopped. So that's always been something in my life, has been a book, something to read, something to write.
So, what age were you when you wrote your first book?
Well, that all depends on what you call a book. So when I was very young, I used to write stories on paper and staple the pages together, and that was my book. And it wasn't until I was in my 40s that I decided I really need to sit down and write a book, because that was my goal in life. So I started working on a project, and that really didn't pan out to anything. So I was inspired at my work as a hospital case manager with the idea that became Blue Hydrangeas, and I managed to complete that project. It took a long time. It took me many years from to write the book and then to actually publish it. It took me about 9 years to publish it. And that was an interesting adventure because I had no idea what I was doing. And it ended up becoming the catalyst for me to reach out to other authors writing about Alzheimer's and dementia and start AlzAuthors.com.
So, Marianne, you have a personal story connected to Alzheimer's and dementia, correct?
Mm-hmm. Yes, I do. I have had several of my aunts whom had Alzheimer's, one back and in the in the 1990s, I guess it was. And she was very close to our family. She was my mother's oldest sister, 15 years older. So she was more like a grandmother. And we kind of like, that's how she treated us and how we treated her, as a very loving and benevolent, generous, kind grandma. And she started exhibiting signs of Alzheimer's. And at the time, she lived with my cousin, and I lived near them. So I got to spend a lot of time and witness her decline, which I didn't really understand at the time. And I don't think anybody really knew a lot about Alzheimer's back in the 90s. But she ended up passing. She went into the late stages in a nursing home, and she died of the Alzheimer's. And then I had my father's sister. Now, my father's sister, she was 15 years older than my father.
Oh.
But we weren't as close to her. You know, but you know, I was aware of her, and we spent a lot of time with them. And then when she became ill, I really didn't see her much anymore. And then I had another aunt on my dad's side, my my uncle's wife, his brother's wife. And we were very close too, but she lived in California, so I didn't get to see her much, but I know that she had a very, a terrible decline. So I'm kind of glad I missed it. And my aunt, my mom's sister inspired me to go into nursing at the time. I had never dreamt of being a nurse, actually. It was something I absolutely did not want to do. When I was in high school, my senior year, my guidance counselor brought me into his office to talk about my plans. And I said, I want to be a writer. And he said, you'll be a good nurse. And I said, no, that's not ever going to happen. Well, we all set out on one path and life has other plans. So when I was at a crossroads, what I wanted to do with my career, because the writing thing wasn't working out, I ended up going to nursing school and working part-time as an aide in a nursing facility with Alzheimer's, people with Alzheimer's and dementia. So that was really a very strong foundation, and I enjoyed it. It wasn't anything, I liked going to work. I looked forward to seeing my people and just being with them. They were kind of fun, and it was good work. And then I went into nursing. And I met my husband. Now, my husband, his grandmother, she had Alzheimer's. And I never knew her because she passed before I met him. And then his aunt also. He had an aunt who recently passed on due to Alzheimer's disease. And then in around that time, in the last few years, my stepfather, he was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. And so with all of these other people, I was kind of on the outside looking in. I wasn't responsible for anybody. I didn't have to make decisions. They didn't live with me. I was a visitor. I heard the stories. But when it was my stepfather, that was different because my stepfather really didn't have any family. And when I went with him and my mom, I took them to an attorney to draw up papers for their wills and their living wills and power of attorney and things like that. And he made me his person. So I never dreamed that he would have Alzheimer's or dementia. My mother was terrified of it because it took her sister from her. She would pray. My mom was a very devout Catholic woman, and she would literally pray to the Virgin Mary, please don't let me get Alzheimer's. So when my stepfather started showing signs that something wasn't right with him, First, I thought it was just he was depressed. Well, he was just being difficult because he was difficult. That was his nature. And he was a jokester and a prankster, and he liked to make trouble and instigate, make people argue. He liked that kind of thing. So we just thought he was amping that up. And finally, it got to a point where I said, there's something seriously wrong here, and brought him for an evaluation. And it turned out he did have dementia, which my mother was devastated because that was the big thing she was afraid of. She wasn't afraid of anything else. So I ended up becoming his power of attorney. I handled all of his legal, medical, and financial issues until he passed away. And prior to that, just not too long, he was diagnosed in 2015, but earlier in that year, we started AlzAuthors. So that all kind of like collided at that time.
So Marianne, do you want to tell us a little bit about AlzAuthors and how many's in the community and how it works and all of that?
Sure, I love to. That's my favorite topic. So I published my book. I was self-published. I couldn't get anybody interested in reading it, any editor or agent or anything like that, because I was an unknown writer, and it was on a tough topic. I mean, Alzheimer's and dementia are, a lot of people run away. They don't want to know about it or think about it. And I was really kind of depressed and discouraged by the fact that I couldn't get anybody even take a look at the first chapter. And I tried going the traditional publishing route for a few years, and a friend of mine had published her book on a Kindle, and that was when Kindle first came out. So she said, why don't you do that? It would, what have you got to lose? And I had nothing to lose. So I said, okay, I think I'll do it. So I did. It took me a year. I managed to get that accomplished, put the book out there, and then I started hearing from people who were reading it, or they weren't people that I knew. They were just people who found the book and read it and liked it. So I knew that I had a good product. I was happy about that. But still, I wanted to try to find a bigger audience. So at the time, I was involved with a writers group. It was called Clean Indie Reads. And what they did was they supported one another, trying to help people get publicity and promotion for their works. And they didn't compete against each other, and which is an interesting concept, because a lot of people are writing in the same genres. They're looking for the same reader. And I got involved with them, and what we would do is share each other's books on social media, in our newsletters, on our blogs, and do all kinds of fun stuff online. And it was a good group, and share knowledge and help each other, figure out how to get published and how to market and all that. So I was thinking on that one day, and I said, gee, I wonder if it would be possible to find some other people who have written books on Alzheimer's and dementia and kind of do the same thing with them. I wonder if that would work. So I knew a few people. So I reached out to them, and we got together. There were 5 people initially. We decided to do a 1-month campaign. It was in June of 2015, which is Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. And we said, why don't we promote each other's books and share blog postings and things like that during this month? We'll see what happens. So there were 3 of us, of those 5, who were really dedicated to this, and we got to become good friends. So at the end of that month, it was pretty good. We decided we would do it again in November. November is Caregiver Appreciation Month. So we said, well, let's do it again. That was fun. So we did. We had more fun. And then the following year rolls around. It's coming up again, Alzheimer's and Brain Awareness Month. And I said, why don't we get together again and do something, but let's do something bigger. Why don't we start our own blog? And why don't we invite other authors who have written books on this subject to write a blog post for us to promote their book, the story behind their story? We'll do it Monday to Friday for 4 weeks, the month of June. So we need 20 people. And we'll promote them all on social media. So then that's when we came up with the name AlzAuthors and started the blog. And at first we didn't know what was going to happen. We said, well, how are we going to find 20 people that are going to write a blog post for us? They don't know us, and we're nobody. We're just starting out. But at the end of the month, we had more posts. We had more authors that wanted to be involved. So we said, okay, why don't we keep going? But we won't do it every day. That was getting out of hand. We'll just do it once a week. Every week we'll have a new author, a new book. We'll see what happens. So that was in 2016. So here we are now in 2023, and we have over 350 authors in our collaborative. All of our authors, I would say well over 90%, 95 or more percent, have all been on their own personal dementia journey with a loved one. So these are people writing about something that they know deeply. And it's not a bunch of, professionals. Professionals, they have their place, but it's people who are writing the stories and the chapters that are about being up all night with a parent that won't sleep and trying to manage your children while you're also trying to manage your mother, and all of the whatever it is that goes on, in a family, in a household when there's somebody living with dementia. That's what we look for in our books. So it's interesting. We have so many genres. We have children's books, fiction, nonfiction, caregiver guides, memoir, poetry, art books. There are photography books. But we also feature blogs, people who might be blogging their story. And a lot of people do that. There are people who are living with dementia who are blogging their story and have also written books. And we also feature podcasts. A lot of our authors, they have podcasts, and they're not necessarily writing a story, but they're telling stories, and they're doing it consistently, and they have a personal story themselves. And then we also have some film. So there's a handful of films right now, all told from personal journeys. So we've really come a long way in this last 8 years. We started out, let's do a 1 month thing, and now we have a new book, new author every other week for the most part. And then in between, we do the podcast. So we have our own podcast, the Untangling Alzheimer's and Dementia podcast. We interview the authors that are in our collection.
Well, Marianne, it just goes to show you how many stories are out there, right?
Mm-hmm.
From 2015 to where you are today in 2023.
Yeah.
But there's still a lot of stigma around dementia
Mm-hmm.
and Alzheimer's. A lot of people will say, "Oh, well, they're just acting up. They're just, they're just
Mm-hmm.
old. They're,
Mm-hmm.
the stigma." So,
Yep.
what are some of the stigmas that you have heard working as a caregiver?
People think that it's that they're crazy. It's a mental illness. It's a mental disease, it's not mental illness like schizophrenia or depression or any of those. It's a brain disease, and so the brain is slowly dying, and people are not responsible for what happens because their brain is dying. People are not responsible for being mentally ill either. But in our case, like with my stepfather, when he was acting up, it went on for quite a while. We just thought he was just trying to be a jerk because he liked to be a jerk. I mean, he did. He really was. He was a handful. So we ignored it for a long time until it became impossible to ignore, and had to take some steps and see what's going on, because maybe we could fix it. So that's one of the stigmas, is they're crazy. And I mean, people are very uncomfortable with the whole concept of mental illness or losing your mind or anything that even suggests that there's something wrong with the way that you think. And then it's all about your behavior. So that's huge. And the other one is that it's just a normal part of aging, and that we can just expect it as we get older, that we are going to end up with dementia, some kind of dementia, and not be fully functioning and able to take care of ourselves. And that's not true. That is not normal aging by any means. And so trying to educate people about that is really important, because that's when people will know that not to accept it, not to accept these changes, and to look for solutions, because there may be a reason that you can cure why a person is having some kind of cognitive impairment. And then there may not be. It may be like dementia or Alzheimer's, so there is no cure. But when if we don't know what's going on, then we can't try to do anything about it, or even to make plans, because it's a progressive illness. So most people, you can live, some people up more than 20 years after diagnosis, which is a long time to live with something. And that gives you a lot of time to plan and prepare how you want to end your life and how do you want to live the rest of your life. So that's very important. And people are very uncomfortable about the concept of death and don't want to think about that either. So that's like another stigma that's associated with it. It is a terminal illness. There is no cure at this point. And most people are living well with dementia. People can live well even if they have been diagnosed. We have many authors in our organization who are living well with dementia, some for more than 10 years. And I'll tell you all about them. We're doing a program. We have an event coming up next Tuesday, the 24th. It's at 10:30 in the morning, called Everything You've Always Wanted to Know About Living with Dementia But Were Afraid to Ask, Part 2. And what this is a meeting of 5 people all living with dementia who have all either written a book or helped write their own book with somebody else. And we met with them 2 years ago and talked about their stories and their journeys. And we wanted to get back together again to see what's changed in the past 2 years, if anything. So we're going to get together with them again next week. And that's just an hour-long discussion. It's at 10:30 in the morning because 3 of these people live in the United Kingdom. So we have a 5-hour time difference. The other 2 are in the United States. It's 3 women, 2 men. And one of them, Peter Berry, he's a cyclist. He rides something called a penny farthing. I don't know if you've ever heard about it. It's one of those big bikes
No.
with the little wheel, the big giant wheel in the front and the little wheel in the
Oh,
back.
yes, I have.
Yeah, it's an old-fashioned kind of a bike. Well, he rides that all over the English countryside, and he rides other types of bikes too, more contemporary kinds of bicycles. And he likes to raise money for the Alzheimer's cause, so he does that there. And he's got 2 books out, and both of them were written by his friend Deb Bunt, and it tells his story. And people who are interested in getting into the mind of a person with dementia can learn a lot from his books. We have Jennifer Butte, who is a physician. She had to retire from her practice. She lives in an assisted living in England, and she's kind of like the resident expert on everybody. She's still serving people using her medical expertise and her skills. I mean, she's not doctoring or anything like that, but she's there and she's still helping. And she has a book, and also she blogs. Her blog is called Glorious Opportunity, and that's what she considers her dementia, a glorious opportunity. Also in England is Wendy Mitchell, who is remarkable. She's been living with dementia for almost 10 years. She's just published her 3rd book, and that was written with the help of a journalist. So her book is kind of like ghostwritten. She travels all over England supporting Alzheimer's advocacy, research, speaking. She's been granted 2 honorary doctorates from 2 different universities. She has a very rich, full life. She lives by herself. And then in the United States, I have Michael Ellenbogen. He's a young man. His symptoms started at 39 years old, and he was diagnosed at 49. So in many, many cases, it takes that long for people to get an accurate diagnosis. And there's a lot of reasons for that, which we can get into. But he was diagnosed at 49. He was an IT executive. He had to leave his job, so he's been unemployed. He became a dementia advocate. He's spoken in front of the United States Congress. He was very active with blogging and social media and going out and doing public appearances, and wrote a book. And now that as his disease progresses, he's been slowing down. And then the last person is Herta Saunders. She's a South African. She lives in Utah. And she was a professional at university in the gender studies program. And she was also diagnosed early on and had to leave her work, and has published her memoir and blogs also, and has been the subject of a PBS documentary. So these people are not suffering with dementia. Okay, that's another stigma, that people think that people who have dementia, they're suffering, they're stricken, that their lives are horrible. No, not now anyway. So as I said, some of these people have been with this for 10 years. That's a long time.
So Marianne,
So,
who is the youngest in the AlzAuthors group diagnosed with dementia or Alzheimer's?
it's probably Michael Ellenbogen. I'm not really sure. I mean, I have about maybe 10 or 12 people that have the diagnosis, but I think Michael was the youngest because he was only 49, which is pretty young.
So that's also another thing that's a stigma around Alzheimer's and dementia, is that it's only an old age disease, right? Illness,
right?
But it's not. It's affecting different age groups and different brains and that. So, with your work in caregiving in the hospitals and all of that with Alzheimer's, what was the youngest case that you had in the hospital?
I can't recall, really. It's been a long time. I don't remember. But I will scare you and tell you that there is such a thing as childhood dementia. And there are children that have dementia. Yeah. Pediatric dementia.
Wow.
It's a brain disease. And so children have it, and the Australians are really at the forefront of this discovery and investigating what this is all about. So you could Google that, childhood dementia Australia, and find a lot of information and resources there and what that's all about. I I know about it, but I haven't really delved too deeply into that. It kind of scares me. And on the other, there's also canine and feline dementia, animals.
Oh,
Yeah, I had a
oh,
cat. I think he had dementia. hmm
wow.
But yeah, those things are real. It's a brain disease, and it can be caused by many different things. So we don't really know a lot about the brain. We know a lot more about other things. We know a lot about the heart. One of the things that we learned about when you take care of your heart, you're also caring for your brain. So anything that you do to keep yourself heart healthy is also going to keep your brain healthy. So now you have two reasons to do it. You know, your diet, your exercise, managing your weight, socialization, keeping active, keeping your brain active, very important. People who, are more social tend to live better, they live longer. So those are things that people need to put into their lives if they don't have it already. It's really important.
Well, and I think it's really important that we have this discussion, because we need to get these stories out there. And the
Mm.
title that you gave me to share tonight's story was The Value of Storytelling in
hmm
Caregiving. Sharing our stories makes us strong. Do you want to
Yeah.
share a little bit on that?
Yeah, because it all goes back to the stigma. And so sometimes when people have a diagnosis, they don't want to tell anybody. Peter Berry, whom I mentioned, he was like that for a year. He almost killed himself. He came very close to committing suicide because he was so despondent over the fact that he was going through this, and his father had been through it, so he knew what it was all about. And then they decided to start telling people. And there's two things that happen. Either you're going to have those people who rally around you and support you no matter what, and then you're going to have the ones who quietly move away. So people are afraid of that. Now, if you're working, say you're working and you're the primary breadwinner for your family, and now you have cognitive impairment, you've gotten some kind of a diagnosis. You don't want to talk about that because you'll probably lose your job. If you can keep it. I mean, some people
Yeah.
can work for a long time. It all depends on what you do. But people don't want to give that up, obviously. And people don't want to have the diagnosis associated with themselves or even with their loved ones. They're afraid people are going to think that, again, crazy, mentally ill, all of that stigma that's attached. So people tend to isolate and they don't tell others. So what we've learned is that when people do mention to somebody like a coworker or neighbor or anyone, somebody they know in church, we're dealing with this. My mom has dementia. In many cases, that person's going to say, "Oh, I know what you mean because we've got that too, or that happened to my grandmother." It's just unbelievable how it's such a deep thread that it infiltrates so many different families, but people think that they're the only ones. They don't understand. They don't, what are other people doing about this? And a lot of it comes from when a diagnosis is made, and this is like a huge problem with the medical establishment, is people are not given resources. They're told you have this illness, you can try this medicine, and we'll see you next year. And they leave with millions of questions and they don't even know where to turn. A lot of people don't know they have resources in their own community. Most communities will have an office for the aging and they can help, or they have the Alzheimer's Association, the Alzheimer's Society, or anything like that. There's plenty of agencies all over the world that can help people. And then there's tons of resources online. You can find information there and support. So when you isolate yourself from that, then you don't know about these resources. You're not able to take advantage of them. And so that's another big problem. And the other thing is change. So we are, as human beings, we do not like change. We like comfort. We like to stay in our comfort zone and we like to know what to expect and things to go the way that we plan. And when there's somebody has a diagnosis like dementia or any other very serious illness, what it does is it results in change across the whole board. Everybody's life is impacted now. So people want to, avoid that. So those are just some of those things.
Yeah, I want to get into your tea, because your tea is going to bring into the next the next part of our conversation. So if I give you the letter TEA, I know you have a TEA in you, and I also know that you have an EDS
The
in you.
EDS. Yeah.
So I want you to share that, and then I'll ask you why you gave me those words.
Okay, so we'll start with the TEA. And I wrote Transforming Education of Alzheimer's. And so that's kind of like my mission here with AlzAuthors, is to get people to learn and understand about Alzheimer's and dementia before they have to. That would be good. Before it's part of your life or somebody you love, is to kind of get an idea, what is this brain disorder about? Get rid of some of these stigmas, the misinformation that surrounds it. So that when people encounter someone, and you will encounter somebody with dementia as you go about your business, if you go outside, people are out there, everywhere you go, restaurants, shopping, they may be driving next to you in your doctor's office, at sporting events, wherever you're going to go, there's going to be somebody that has it. At least if they have a problem or they need assistance, then you would know what to do. And you would know that they're not crazy or something else is going on, that they truly have a problem, and that you could help them. So that's really important. And that's the whole mission with AlzAuthors, really, is to bring these stories and share them and educate people, and also to support the other caregivers and people who are currently on that path right now, to find stories that are like their own. So if you're caring for your mother, we have almost 100 books about caring for your mother. So, you can see how other people manage. And then I think that makes people strong. So we get strong. You're stronger for telling your story. And then the people who read it, they're going to be stronger because they read it. And then the other one, the EDS, was eliminating dementia stigma. And it kind of ties into the first one, of just like letting people understand that it is not normal aging, all the things that we discussed. It's not normal aging. You don't have to expect it. You don't have to accept it. You can, you're not crazy. It's not a mental illness. So there's no cure. So that's another thing. People can't stop it. And whatever other stigmas that we discussed. That's my mission and the mission of my organization.
Well, I honestly think by sharing stories, we're breaking stigma, one story at a time, because by getting the voices out there, by getting the stories out there, we're actually showing people that it's not this way, not to be afraid of it. And I like that you said getting informed, getting informed before you find out a diagnosis, getting involved and understanding. Volunteer in the seniors, volunteer in youth groups, get the conversation going, just keep the flow going, because I think that's the way we're really going to break stigma, is if we just keep sharing stories, we keep getting the awareness out there. And what you're doing with AlzAuthors is amazing, because you're getting that awareness out there and you're opening up that door for everyone, and since 2015 to 2023, look where you are today, Marianne. Like, you've opened up so many doors and so many avenues. And I did check out your website, and on your website, you even have listings of resources and places to check out for information. A lot of websites don't have those resources to avenue somewhere else. I really appreciate that, because if something's not on the website, you can always go to a different site, or you can go to a different location and find it.
Exactly. That's how the whole thing is designed, really, because, if you don't like my book, if it doesn't address your situation, it's not the type of dementia, it's not your relationship, you don't like fiction, then, you'll find another book that you do like in that collection. And so that's fine, because somebody else is going to come maybe to our website, and they'll look for something else and discover me. And, we're altruistic in that way. And one thing about websites, a lot of times people don't want anybody to leave their website and go to another website because they're probably not going to come back. Right? They, you know how we get stuck in those little rabbit holes. Like, how did I get here? You know, an hour later, I'm like, oh, I forgot where I started. So we are generous in that we will, if we have good information to share, and a lot of it comes from our authors and our partners, people that support us. Everything is very a shared mission. So we put that out there too, because our goal is just to help the families, the caregivers, and also, you know, people working in this field, because even in people working in the field, they have their own stigmas. You know, they take that to work with them.
Yeah.
Physicians will take that to work with them and treat patients and, you know, give off a negative vibe and don't even know that there are people who are out there who are like traveling the country with dementia, talking about dementia and making an impact. It's amazing.
So, Marianne, you have a personal story with family members and
Mhm.
loved ones. What is the biggest fear when you get that diagnosis as a family member, not the person who has the Alzheimer's and dementia, but what does it feel like for a family member?
There's a lot of uncertainty, and there's going to be change. You know, so my mom, when her husband, he was 9 years younger than her. So she was in her late 80s when he was diagnosed. And my biggest concern was that my mother's life was going to stay the same, because I knew that if she started going through a lot of turmoils and things, it was going to have a negative impact on her. And I think that's what happens to like a lot of people. They don't know what to expect. Some of the behaviors can be really hard to live with. They can be ugly. People don't behave well. And I'm talking about people who have dementia, although it could be anybody in the situation. But a lot of times, if people are having difficult behaviors and things like that, families don't know how to handle it. It can be scary. It can be dangerous. So a lot of people are afraid of things like that. And then there's like the huge financial burden. So the biggest cost associated with Alzheimer's and dementia is for care, whether it's care at home or if person has to move to memory care or long-term nursing care in a facility or something like that. That can like wipe you out, bankrupt you in a very short time. You know, in the United States, it's about $12,000 a month for my stepfather's nursing home. And people in the United States, average citizen doesn't have that kind of money laying around for 15, not that long, maybe 7, 8 years, say. They were going to live that way. It's a long time. You go broke. So that's like another fear that people have is, you know, how is this going to affect me? How is this going to affect us financially? How long is this going to go on? That's another one. And then at the same time, you know that it comes to its natural conclusion, but at the end, you've lost your loved one. And then you start losing them even before, you know, because they are not the same person. It's not the person you married. It's not the mother you know or the father you know anymore. It's a different person. And people are afraid of that as well, losing their relationship. And then sometimes when you become caregiver to like a spouse or a parent, it changes the whole, you know, dichotomy of the relationship. And relationships aren't really meant to be that way, you know. So it's really hard for people facing that, the loss of their, you know, your spouse, your partner, your lover, the person you know go with, you travel with, you go places. Yeah, you have your family together. You know, that's altered. That may never be the same. So people struggle with that. That's another big fear. So yeah, there's a lot of fear. I can go on and on about that. But you know, at the same time, if people learn about the disease and its progression and different strategies on how to manage what's going to come up, they can actually live well with it. Some people say that their lives are better. So,
Well, and grieving the living is hard. because they're here, but they're not here, right?
Exactly.
And grief is hard to begin with. So to go through living grief, I go through it with different situation, and it's hard to explain to someone. They keep saying, well, that person's still here. Well, that person is here but not here, you know. And the loss of going in and knowing that your mom doesn't recognize you, where you're having a conversation, you're like, hi mom, and she kind of looks at you and, like, who are you? you know I want to get into because you said it could be aggressive at times, because people with dementia are known to have aggression. Is it because they're afraid inside of themselves, that they're not understanding what's going on, so they get aggressive?
That could be a part of it, but usually when somebody reacts in an aggressive manner, something's wrong. They don't have the ability to tell us what it is. So it could be something simple, like they're hungry, they're cold, they have pain, they're upset about something's bothering them. They might be trapped in some kind of a loop where they're thinking somebody did them wrong or whatever. And maybe they didn't, but they can't get that out of their head. They feel trapped. There's a lot of things that it could be. So then it's the job of the caregiver to try to discover what that is. And sometimes you can manage people. It takes time though, but you can manage people, and you don't have to medicate them so that they calm down. But that's usually the first thing, is to like have a list of like what could be bothering, and work the list and see if you can discover what it could be. I mean, they could have soiled themselves. I mean, there's a million things.
So, Marianne, we have a question here. Do you feel that we should be speaking about dementia and Alzheimer's in the elementary schools?
Absolutely. Why? Because kids are already living with it. They have grandparents. They could be their parent with young onset Alzheimer's. It could be, a father, a mother that has it. So, and it's very disruptive. It's disruptive to family life. It can be very disruptive. So, for example, say you're like 9 years old, and you're playing like Little League, and you're going to school, and you have homework, and you expect your parents to help you, and they do. But now your grandmother has dementia. So every night your mother goes to her house to make sure she's okay, and to make sure she's eating and taking her meds, and, get to bed, or visits at the nursing home. So now she's not there for you. And kids know that. Many children are even acting as caregivers to elders, parents, or grandparents. So it would not be unusual for a child to, like, maybe, before they go to school in the morning, to help get grandma up and make her breakfast and take her to the bathroom. I mean, yeah, it's a part of their life as well. So it's better for them to know and to understand what's going on, so that they're not scared, because it's scary. When you're a kid, it's very scary. And to see strange behaviors, or your grandmother doesn't know who you are, kids have a hard time with that.
But I think it would help also with the stigma, because it's not only just elders that are getting dementia. Like you mentioned earlier, animals have it, children have it. If we start opening that conversation to kids and understanding how they feel when having that conversation and saying, how do you feel that grandma and grandpa don't remember you? That, have that conversation, because we have to have these tough conversations in order to bring awareness, in order to get the conversation going, in order to understand it a lot more without the fear. Because I find if we start having these open conversations and discussions, we're going to take away some of the fear, some of the stigma.
Right. And that's why we have so many books for kids in our collection. There's a ton of them. Beautiful picture books that talk about that.
So I want to talk about some of the books that you have on your website, because you do have memoirs on there. You have caregiver guides, you have fiction, you have children's books, teens, quick reads, and art. So do you want to share a little bit about the art?
Art is a very helpful tool in dementia. So we have books that help people, teach people what kind of art projects and things that they can do with their loved one. It's a communication tool. So even if somebody's nonverbal, they may be able to draw what's going on inside them. It can be very profound. So we have books that are about that, but we also have books. We have one book, Cynthia Hewling Hummel, who is living well with dementia in New York, is a reverend. That was her career. And she created these masks for a project, and each mask was about like how she felt, and it's related to her dementia. And those were put in a book, so you could look at that book and you could see stuff like that. So we have things like that as well. And there's photography books and a lot of poetry, beautiful poetry. We did a poetry event. You can find it on our YouTube channel and on our podcast called Poetry for the Dementia Journey. It was 2 hours long, and there were 34 poets who read their work. And it was, ran the gamut from things that were very, simple and from people who were just starting out to very high level, excellent, award-winning poetry. And one of the people had dementia who participated in that. She was from the UK. So that was a truly remarkable event. People were crying because some of the poetry was so beautiful, just talking about the loved one that they lost or their journey or all of it. It was really great. So we have a lot of that as well, and kind of in that category. We have one cookbook. It's a cookbook for caregivers. It's a way to incorporate cooking with your loved one at home. Try to keep, you always got to try to keep people occupied. So it's simple recipes that you can prepare and with tasks that you can give to your person who has dementia, that they can help, that they can take part and be useful, because that's important. We want them to feel that they're still a part of things and they can make a contribution. So if they're capable of doing that. So that was the only cookbook that we have, which was a good one. But what other kind of books did you want to know about?
So you have teen books. So are they stories of grandparents?
Yeah, I think most of them are grandparents. They're young adult novels, so it's fiction. And they have, some of them are about the Alzheimer's journey, but some of them, it's like a sub-theme where one of the characters has this part going on in their life. And it's just a kind of a gentle way of introducing the whole concept of dementia to a teen reader. So it might be somebody like they're not reading the book because of that, but they just picked it up for a different reason. And now here they are learning all about this. It's like, I like that. It's like the backdoor approach.
I like
fiction,
it too.
Yeah, fiction is good for that.
So we're almost at the hour here. I want to put it out there. If anybody would like to submit stories or become part of AlzAuthors, how could they do that?
They're published books. So we have a submission form on our website. You can find that. It's on the I think it's on the contact page. And there's a whole big list of criteria, all these rules and regulations of how we vet the books, because we don't take every book. We take about 60% of the books that come our way. There's a lot of requirements that the books and the authors have to meet. So you would complete that. There's a $25 submission fee. And then we, when we get that, we have an acquisitions team, about 4 or 5 of us, who actually vet the books. So whoever's interested in that story or that author can take it on and investigate and see how they are. For instance, we read the book cover to cover. We also look at the ratings that the book has received. It's inspected for quality, because a lot of the books are self-published, and we want to make sure that they're putting out a quality product that can stand up to a traditionally published book. And then we also, because it's a collaborative, so when you come in, we're going to publicize your book, but you're expected to publicize us and to publicize the other authors as well. So, and make friends that way. Really, that's a great way to make friends in your world. So we look to see that they're doing that. They have to have at least 2 social media platforms that they're active on. We like the books to be published in digital book and paperback, and audiobooks are great too, but we don't require an audiobook. But typically the book has to be in both formats, unless, some books don't really do well in digital. So, it depends. They may only have a paperback. And we give special preference to people who have dementia, so we can relax the rules a little bit, because those are the voices that we really want to hear.
Yeah.
So we might relax some of that. And we want them to be based on personal experience, and to be have an overall positive message. So we know that there is a lot of negative associated with caring for a loved one with dementia or having dementia. So, we just don't want to silence that or anything, but, we don't want to have all of the books be about that either. So we strike for a good balance.
I think we have enough negative in the world today that, we got to start putting the positive out there. So what final message would you have for the listeners today?
Well, my final message is not to be afraid of Alzheimer's or dementia, to know that it is a brain disease. It happens to people. We certainly don't want it to happen to us. So there are things that you can do to keep your brain healthy, like you would do to keep your heart healthy, by eating right, stay away from a lot of processed foods, manage your weight, manage your blood pressure, get physical activity, be social, keep yourself active, don't isolate yourself, keep your brain going. Those are all things that can help you to prevent from getting Alzheimer's or dementia yourself. And if you see the signs of something's not right with your loved one, they don't act right, they sleep too much, they're combative, they can't find things, they get lost. That's usually like the one thing I noticed in a lot of these stories, is when people decide to take action, the person has gotten lost someplace where they go all the time. And that can have like deadly repercussions. So that's really serious if people start getting lost, especially if they're driving. Yeah. So you really need to pay attention and not to be afraid, but to go take that person. And if it's a parent and they're independent, it's harder because, they're not used to you butting in and things like that. But like with my stepfather, I had to go to the doctor with them, because I would tell my mother, when you go to the doctor, tell him this. And she would come home and I said, well, what did he say? Oh, well, I forgot. I didn't tell him. So now 3 more months have to go by before we go back. So the clock is ticking. So finally I said, I'm going to go with you to the doctor. So she was happy. She's like, oh, that's nice. He's nice. You'll like him. So, well, that's not why I'm going, but I'm going to tell on him and see what's going on here. We ended up having to get another doctor. So don't be afraid of that if you have to fire the doctor, because we had to do that. So you just really want to try to get a handle on what's happening, because there are many things that can cause these kinds of issues, and that has nothing to do with Alzheimer's or dementia, and it's something that can be corrected. So you never want to assume, oh, well, she must have dementia, nothing we can do about it, so we won't do anything. Well, that's not good. So they deserve more. They deserve more.
Absolutely. So Marianne, if anybody would like to reach you, how could they reach you?
They can send me an email at mariannesciucco@gmail.com or marianne@alzauthors.com. I have that email address. I'm on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram. I don't go on Instagram as much. I'm usually on Facebook. So you could find me there. Shoot me a message. You could write to us at AlzAuthors@gmail.com. You can listen to my podcast and get to us through that. It's on the website. The website has the blog, the podcast, the bookstore. I didn't tell you about the bookstore. The bookstore, all of our books, because when we started getting a lot of books, we said we got to organize these books so people can find what they want. So the books are all organized according to the category of the relationship. So caring for your mother, caring for your father. Books on general dementia, Lewy body disease, vascular dementia, children's books, art books, poetry books. It's all you'll see it on the website. So you can just click and it takes you right to those titles. So you're not wading through a bunch of other books that don't mean anything to you.
Well, I want to really thank you, Marianne, for sitting and getting these stories out and getting your story out as well. If
Thank you.
everybody would like to go and check out AlzAuthors.com, check it out. There's a lot of information there. I highly recommend that you go and check it out and keep the conversation going. Let's share this tea time. If you know somebody that's living with dementia or Alzheimer's, or maybe experiencing it, share this tea time and let's get the information out there so we can all make a difference together.
Super. Thank you.
So I want to really thank you, Marianne, for sharing. And I want to thank all of the viewers and listeners for supporting Miss Liz. Without all of you guys, I could not do this. So I want to thank you all for that. And I will see you guys all next week, same time, same place, with 3 new TEAs for you to share and enjoy. Until then, have a good night and enjoy your weekend.
Thank you so much.